Well, hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll show you how I updated this boring 1980s vanity countertop to a beautiful slab of marble. Actually, it's faux marble, and I made it using leftover paint. Let me show you how I did it. First of all, I needed to remove all of the caulking from around the backsplash and sink. I cleaned the surface well with alcohol wipes and taped off the wall and around the sink. I used a sponge roller and applied 2 coats of primer. I let that dry for a couple of hours and then applied 2 coats of ultra white enamel paint that I had left over from my kitchen table project. If you would like to watch how I marbled my kitchen table using this technique, the link is above and also in the description below. I also used the leftover sample paints from my kitchen project for the veins. I painted in a downward motion, making random lines and marks. I used lighter pressure for the thinner veins and heavier pressure for making thicker veins. I used a sea sponge for blending and wiping off any excess paint. I'm using a makeup blending sponge to add paint to clean up some of the areas where I've over blended. I do this pretty much all over the countertop, and then I start realizing my marble doesn't look like marble. Instead, it's beginning to look more like stone. It's beginning to look more like my fireplace. I love the stone fireplace, but I really wanted marble on my countertop. So yeah, guess what I did? I went back and painted over the countertop. That is what is so wonderful about paint. If you don't like what you've done, you can turn around and paint over it and start brand new. And that's what I did. So I started painting the veins again. Rolling the paintbrush, heavier pressure for thicker veins and lighter pressure for thinner veins, and using the sea sponge for blending. My plan was to create just a couple of veins because I didn't want the countertop to be too busy. But I got a little carried away and I ended up with veins all over. But when I stood back and looked, I didn't like how dark I had painted them. I thought about it during the night and woke up with a great idea. I didn't want to start all over again, so I wondered if I toned down the paint, would I like them a little better? So I used the paint roller and went over the veins a couple of times, and the lighter they became, the more I really liked them. Onto the Epoxy Resin Prep. I taped off and used plastic everywhere around the vanity, the sink, the floor, the walls, the doors, everywhere I thought resin would splatter or drip on. Since I finished my kitchen table earlier in the week, I had all my supplies handy. The scales for accurate measuring, the epoxy and resin, the press and seal. I put on all of my tools to keep them clean and resin free. My little torch for air bubbles, and plenty of alcohol for cleaning up resin boo-boos. And finally, a respirator. If you use resin inside, you should always wear a respirator. I cleaned the countertop with alcohol and put the painter's tape at the front to make a dam so the resin wouldn't spill over. I mixed the epoxy and resin in one container and used the drill and paint attachment to mix the resin for about 6 minutes. That's about how long it took for it not to look cloudy. I usually use a foam roller to spread the resin, but the trowel was much easier to move the resin, and it was definitely easier to get it onto the backsplash. And since there wasn't any paint in the resin, I had a really long work time. After a couple of days, I used Stone Coat Glossy Top Coat for added durability. It gets hard and is ready for use after 3 days. Then it was time for me to clean up around the backsplash. I had to fill in some areas with putty. The paint needed touching up from the tape damage. I cleaned it all up with caulking and finally added a new faucet. So you guys, here is my finished countertop. Do you like it? Please leave a comment below and tell me your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you will give it a thumbs up, and while you're here, go ahead and click the subscribe button. I would really appreciate your help in growing my channel.